Ah, good morning, good afternoon, and maybe good evening. I don't think evening. I don't think, maybe it's evening in some places, but how are we today? How we doing? 8th Samuel Lamuel. How are we doing today, my friends? What is happening? My stuff's a little laggy today, so just give me a second here. Things aren't updating the way that I want them to. Anyway, all right. Money Mouse, Sean, Matthew, Chellen, Glenn, other Sean, evening in Bangkok. Yeah, another day, another W. Yeah. Hopefully on the pitch as well today. We see United get the win. It's a big one. Can't believe the negativity in the fan base following the stadium news just shows that people being miserable is a personality trait rather than a consequence. Well, I don't believe that it is as negative as it sounds out here at the moment. I think that there's some negativity being highlighted, but I believe that I think that most people are actually quite positive over everything they've heard the last few days. I've spoken to a number of people that I know, personally, locals from the area who don't share my views on things in general, that have been much more concerned about how things are going, all of that. And they one to one have felt a lot better after hearing everything the last few days, from the interview to the stadium stuff and all of that. And I think it makes sense. I panicked and bought field level tickets now in Puerto Boy. I'm here for more. Well, I don't do the PowerPoint content on the lives, but I do want to discuss the things that are in there. You know what I mean? Yeah, most of the stuff's really positive. When I look at the stuff on the stadium and all of that, I think it's just some people are trying to highlight the negativity because it's just the way that they live. Unfortunately, and I feel for them because you could be a lot happier. It could be a lot happier. Um, so yeah, it is what it is on that front. I mean, when I asked, let's see, I polled on the stadium. Let's see, I polled on the stadium whether people liked the design or didn't. 3,872 votes, 82.7% positive said they liked it. That is overwhelmingly, like, if you poll anything and you have an 83% yes, that's not just like a little bit. I mean, getting 83% of people to agree on something or be on the same side is practically impossible. So, yeah, I think it is really positive. I mean, in my community and this community and all of that too. I mean, we barely get, we put up like, the only thing we'll get like 83% on is like Ahmad versus Anthony. You know what I mean? Like, we could put nearly any player comparison up and we won't get 83% voting one way, So that's a big thing. I think that it's people really do like it. Um I think that from an aesthetic standpoint, um I'm not 100% either way on it, and but that's okay to me, because that's just aesthetic. That's just like, everybody's gonna have a different opinion on things. Um, Always, it's hard to get anybody to match on that kind of stuff. So, the aesthetics are different. The aesthetics can be mixed, but that doesn't particularly matter. I think it's decent. And I think that the biggest thing that they wanted out of it is that it was incredible. Okay, that's number one. That functionally it was incredible. So what's happened? You got 104,000 gross seats. You've got 15% of it hospitality. So there's going to be a lot of money to be made there, on something that size. And the way that the inside is laid out, the ground is super close to the field, which was a huge focus for that. Now, if you've been to like in the US stadiums, we have a lot of these that are like very vertical like this, right? That are built really vertically. I mean, most newer stadiums are built very vertically, like this one looks like. When you get the stands close to the field and you're built vertically and you have like a covering, it is going to be so loud in there that it will create an absolutely terrifying atmosphere for opposition and a huge emotional support for the players and the team. And so from a functional standpoint, I think they got it 100% right. I think they did exactly what they wanted to. And I think they got it exactly right. From another standpoint, it is unique. That is one, criticism that you cannot levy against it. Is it that it's unique? That is a unique stadium. That's not a it is not like, does not look generic. It does not look like other things. It looks it looks very different. And that is really cool. And beyond that, you're going to have obviously you're going to have different views on it. I really like the spires. I really like the spires. I really like that the red in the night and how that looks, because it is going to be the landmark in Manchester, right? Like from the air, from the sea, from everywhere, right? It's going to be the most notable thing in Manchester. It will be, right? There's no doubt about that. So I think that in that sense, it's pretty cool. And so I like that a lot. I think that matters, and I think that they were going for that. They wanted something that could even be, that was going to be iconic and represent Manchester in that way, and I think that it does in that respect. And beyond that, everybody's going to have totally different views across a wide variety of scales of everything in terms of how much they like it or what. So yeah, while you're here, please make sure to like, thumbs up, all of that. There's a few hundred people here. Let's get more likes going. All of that. So please, like the video, retweet the post, share, things like that. And the support means an awful lot to me. Again, the support on the recent videos has been really great. On the recent explainers and things like that, been really great. Ryan James, watch the 442 video. Excellent, filled with optimism, hope for the future under Ruben. Yes, and I really recommend that video to everybody because it makes it so clear what's going wrong and will help you, understand for the future as well. Okay, there's a lot to discuss today. Yes, the live just started. So obviously, we've had the interviews, we've had the quotes, we've had the stadium, we've had all of that. One of the things I wanted to go through was, obviously I did a video yesterday about how we will fund it, right? And and I think that that's important. In the video yesterday, I discussed the different ways that this could happen, and and the different things that could happen. And some of the main ways that this is going to occur are, as we discussed there, just to reiterate, things like if it's going to cost $2 billion to $2.5 billion for the whole project, let's say. They say $2 billion. I was estimating even if it was going to take $2.5 billion, then there's a lot of different ways you can do this, right? Madrid, for example, they sold a royalty fee on events to legends or whatever it is, and there's a lot of that in sport to get money up front, where United could get 500 million by saying, hey, you want to host events, concerts, you want to host this, you want to host that, you want to do all these things in here, fine. Well, we'll sell you the rights to do that, and you're going to get, a chunk, 10 10% of the gate prices for all of those for the next 10 years or something, whatever it may be. And then you get 500 million for that, right? You get so you get sponsorships. And Omar Barada talked about this, which I want to show some quotes from him. He talked about how you get sponsors for different sections. You get this is something that happens a lot in America. I don't know if it's like this in a lot of UK stadiums, but let's say you've got a section of the stadium that's it has a section where you have games for kids. You have a place where kids can go practice on a goal, and there's a soccer ball there, and it's or there's games and other little activities and things like that, and it's a kid zone, and it'll be kid zone sponsored by Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So you get stuff like that, and he was talking about how you have different sections that's all that will be sponsored by different companies, different parts of the stadium, and some of it people may not love, but you get the Stretford end would it might have a sponsorship, literally that it's sponsored by that, where a company supports it. So whenever they mention the Stretford end, that it's going to be sponsored by this or that or something when it's on TV, and yeah, a ball pit. Yeah, like a mini pitch outside for kids, and it'll be sponsored, so it could be whatever a sports store, is. I don't know what they are, they're in the UK what they're called, but you could have that, you have the mega store could have a sponsorship and all of these things. So, there's not just naming rights, but lots of different sponsors that could be buying up essentially real estate, visual real estate in parts of the stadium, right? So you even the hospitality suites, where the big money is, you might get some firm that has that. If they do the spires and there's a way to go up into that viewing platform, that could be an expensive thing that's sponsored by some company, that's as well. You could have Qualcomm's viewing, Qualcomm's platform at Old Trafford, or Qualcomm's needle at Old Trafford. I don't know. I'm just saying there's a lot of different things that can be there that can provide funding for the stadium on an ongoing basis and provide cash flow. And what all of that can do, in essence, is let's say you can sell off some things and get some money coming in, all of that. And in the end, you have to take out a loan for half the stadium, 1.25 billion or 1 billion, and it's going to cost you 60-80 million, right? Well, then if you've got the naming rights to the stadium, you've got Snapdragon, let's say, wants to do the stadium or something like that. Yeah, Snapdragon Stretford end, right? That stuff like that. Stretford powered by Snapdragon, stuff like that would be kind of cool, And what if I'm just thinking well ahead on things like this, but imagine you do stuff this is being done in some American stadiums, or Cosm, for example, that place. Imagine you do Snapdragon, powered by Stretford or whatever, and then they literally sell a membership where you can watch the game through cameras in the Stretford end, right? You know what I'm saying? And that's the types of things that they can do to enhance the vision, of what can happen here. These are just all examples that you could think of things that could be done, where you could have Stretford vision. You know what I'm saying? Where you get a camera to watch the game from the Stretford end as a part of a membership or something like that, and you can even do all this VR shit they're doing for NBA games and things like that. But just imagine something like that, and you have a little row in the Stretford end that has cameras that do this, so you can do Stretford vision. It's a cool idea. I'll suggest it, but stuff like that would be certainly possible. That would make it really interesting for fans out and beyond, and you could have a Stretford bar, that's the camera angle. It's seated out in the area on the concourse for people who aren't inside. And the watching of the game is a Stretford cam. You know what I'm there's so many things that could be done, but all of this can provide revenue to the stadium, from the stadium, and into it, and can be kind of iconic in the end. So if you do have to um, you do have to think through all of that. But if United end up taking out a loan or something like that in the end, for a strip club, for a chunk of the um, stuff like that. If they have to take a loan out for 1.25 billion and it costs 60 to 80 million, well, this is how you cover a lot of these things, right? Where you have naming rights on the stadium, sponsorship deals, all of this kind of stuff that brings in, regular income on a regular basis for the stadium that can be brought in before the ticket sales start and can help to fund, the remaining costs. So there's going to be a blend of things, cash being raised from potentially selling off royalties and events. These are like your levers, cash being raised from sponsors, cash being raised from, land purchases and sales and things like that. And then there's also, stuff like, and then it comes to the owner equity. And I think the owner equity is the most, important aspect of this that could ideally do it, right? Because look, there's gonna probably be some there's gonna probably be some what do you call it, like some debt associated with this, but it's obviously have to understand that this debt is not the same as other debt that you get for nothing versus debt tied to an asset is a totally different topic. And there's will probably be some debt involved in all of this. Yeah, I'll definitely talk about how United can be profitable and how they could afford all of this. But like these revenue streams are all part of that. Like realize that's all revenue streams for the club. That's part of it being profitable. If you can get naming rights, if you can sell levers, if you can get sponsors, if you can do all of this while you're building the stadium, that's all revenue for the club. Okay, to make it potentially profitable. So those are things that matter. In doing this, but then also there is definitely the ownership aspect of the whole thing, and how they could get the owner how this could change the overall ownership model. Now, I've been talking about this for a long time, that I think that this could be a significant part of this, that it's a sensible event for a change in ownership to occur. This is where it makes the most sense for an ownership model change to happen. Because if you take it from the Glazers' perspective, unfortunately, right, we know that what they care about is making money. If you take it from Sir Jim's perspective, why would he go through all of this, investing his money, doing all of this, building a legacy, if in 6 months from now, the Glazers could sell it out under him to somebody else? Those things don't add up, okay? The other things that don't add up with it are the whole stadium project. Zero mention of the Glazers in any of the event, in any of the briefings, in any of anything. Okay, none of that was in there. So there's things like, there's all of that. But from a Glazers perspective, the club will become profitable in the shorter term, and that is what is going to have to be used to pay for things like potential debt for the stadium and investment in the team. By being profitable, it doesn't mean that there's money to waste. It means there's money to spend. It doesn't mean there's money to take out. It means there's money to spend. So when you have people say profitable, what they mean is that is what is going to allow us to have the cash flow to fund all of these things. And Omar commented on that in the interview that he did. But the problem is that when you balance all of this, there's no, in the end of all of this, there's money to be made for the Glazers, right? There's money to be made for the Glazers at the end of all of this. But in the short term, it's probably not going to happen without some owner equity investment in as a part of raising the money, because United can't handle 160 million in payments and things like that. And Sir Jim won't want to be in a position where he could be forced out of the club at some point mid this project, because it's a 5-year plan to build this thing. Obviously he intends to be here at the end of that, and he has no guarantee in the current thing that he will be here. So there's very likely to be a change, and the way I see it is that the stadium project is going to massively increase the value of the club. However, at the same time, it can be stated, it could be very possible that the only way the stadium project happens, so the only way the Glazers ever make any more money out of this place, is if owner equity can be put in, which means new shares. So it makes a lot of sense for the Glazers to sell off some of their holdings, leave it in the club so that the rest of their holdings double in value. Or it makes sense to dilute the shares by adding more to sell to Sir Jim. Again, diluting their holding to a smaller percentage, but having that percentage be worth more. And you can do the math on it and look at it. Right now, their shares are at rock bottom value. Right? Their shares are at rock bottom value. Realistically, they maybe could get 2.5 billion for their shares, which is very low for how big of a club United is. Even if they decrease it by 25% more, but the value of the club goes up 3-4 billion, they stand, even even with their shareholding, to have more money at the end of it. And that would be the reason that they would do it, that they can have more money at the end of it. But yeah, there's just no way that any of this can happen without something on the ownership moving forward. And I've been sharing that for quite a while, and it was talked about finally kind of yesterday by MJ Shrimper on the Athletic podcast. He says, when Ratcliffe says the stadium project is bankable, he knows that banks like Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, HSBC, and all the big banks will give them loans. I think Ratcliffe will put some of his own money as well, so that brings us into the ownership issue. When Omar Barada spoke at the conference about Manchester United being a PLC, he would be careful when he mentioned the details. And here I think we're getting a big signal about Sir Jim Ratcliffe having more to do with Manchester United, and this is part of it. So, there was a few other quotes in there, but essentially, his view now, from the Athletic podcast on this, and Matt Slater here, who did a lot of coverage during the takeover and all of that, is that this is a project. The way that people have been speaking, the way that it's looking, is there is clear signs that there will be ties to owner on this. Everybody who's broken it down, from myself, Kieran McGuire, others, have noted that there's very likely going to have to be owner investment in this, and there's a lot of signals to indicate that Sir Jim will be taking more of the club as part of this. So yeah, from things like saying they know, they're not going to need the government funding. They're already ready. They want to break ground this summer. Like, they obviously know what they're doing on this already. And like I've said before, this stadium project is a legacy thing. And Ineos and Sir Jim have been looking at it since before they even got into the club, on how to do it, how to fund it, what they would do. There could be partners that come into play with this, but it is a really, really interesting process. But one thing cannot happen, because it would just make zero sense in any world, which is that the stadium gets built and all of this happens, and the Glazers maintain the same amount of control, and Sir Jim maintains purely a minority share stakeholder that has no rights to his rights, that can be sold out from under him at any time. It makes no sense. There is no world where that is possible, but a world where United get a stadium, Jim gets more shares, and the Glazers get their remaining shareholding being worth a lot more, is a win-win-win for everybody involved. It is a win-win-win for everybody involved. And that it has to be the outcome of all of this. That has to be the outcome of all of this. The other thing that I wanted to walk through on this was some of Omar's quotes, because there's obviously concerns like over things like, whether, how it would affect the, the other stuff. So he says 2 billion is including the whole area. So I estimated over that. Talks about funding and all of that, and says, they're not closing any doors. Obviously, he didn't give tons of specifics on this. But he was talking about how, that that the club had to do a cost adjustment, because there was this thing like, about how we said we're about to run out of money, to suddenly you have all this money, you're getting a new 2 billion stadium. But the thing is, those are totally different subjects. Firstly, the club running out of money is a short-term cash flow problem, that the club is losing money all the time. And then you have to correct that, because to fund projects, you have to have a positive cash flow. You have to be able to have cash to pay for things. So the club's running out of money. That was the reason for all of these cuts. That was the explanation given. And I think that's where people are being a bit cheap, making stories out of that. Sir Jim's interview said that the club was running out of money. And that was the explanation for why the 450 staff cuts. That was the explanation for why cutting all of these things. It wasn't that they're still running out of money. They're not. They've made a huge amount of savings. Like you said, estimated 120 million. But infrastructure is tied always to growth and future revenues as well. So you can afford to spend on things that result in future revenues. What you can't afford to spend on is things that don't result in future revenues, that are just a drain at the moment. So there's always a big difference on this. And that was his point. We need to do a cost adjustment. And one of the things that I also wanted to make clear, based on my understanding of things that I discussed yesterday, is that United feel like they've reached near the bottom. Right now, you could call that rock bottom, and it probably is as well. But they've reached near the bottom of their flooring on spending. So saying, with all the cuts that are now being done, everything that's planned, they've reached as low as they can go on spending. So it's from there, it's not going to be about more cuts and things like that. And one of the things they're quite excited about then is that you've had people leave being redundant and unnecessary roles and things like that. You've had people leave because they've been through a rough period at United that has felt very toxic. And for those people, it's hard for them to stomach it, but it's also hard to create a new atmosphere when people still have that feeling in place. So what's kind of exciting to the club and to people that I've spoken with is the idea that now that they've kind of reached the bottom, they plan on making hires. They plan on making quite a number of hires. Not hundreds like before, but a decent number of significant hires and people coming in to areas with fresh ideas, fresh things, fresh all of that. That's an environment is made by the people in it, and that way you're getting, to some degree. Sometimes you have to clean out the old, even if they weren't the cause of the toxic environment. They can be a byproduct of the toxic environment, to where it's hard for them to feel positive. And sometimes you clean that out and you get new people in who have not had those bad experiences, and that doesn't get carried forward into the present. So that's part of what they're excited about, and that's part of what we'll be looking at moving forward is investing in that step forward. They've talked about being the most profitable club and doing that while investing in the squad. So that's the next goal for the next few years. Allows you to invest in the future. So is the club already one of the most profitable already? Now, this was interesting because I talked about this in another video, that it wasn't fair at all to say that the club was most profitable while they were saying they're broke. And Omar answers this in the same way. He said, we have the highest EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, and amortization, but we're not profitable when it comes to operating losses. So you have to become profitable so we don't incur any operating losses. So point being, in a football club, one of your biggest expenses is amortization, cost of the squad, right? Cost of buying players. So he's saying we need to become so profitable, make so much more money than our operating costs, that even after amortization and buying players, there's money left over. That's how you invest in the future. That's what he wants. That's what he's saying we have to get to. That's what was not happening. We had money. We made more than our operating costs. But after amortization, we were losing money. And so when people say, well, the reason you're losing money is because of bad transfers and all of that, it's silly because you can't stop buying players. You have to buy players in football. Yeah, look, because this is a regular accounting measurement, but when you talk about it in football, you can't think about it the same way as a regular business. It's standard accounting practice, but you have to look at it and say, what you make before amortization is practically meaningless because you're going to have amortization. At a big club, you're always going to be spending more on players than you're bringing in. So you're always going to have a negative amortization of a significant amount. So it's kind of pointless to look at it. And that was his point, is that we have to make so much before amortization that even afterwards, we're cash positive and we're increasing our cash flow every year. Now, there was questions about this because obviously this was a concern for people, that Arsenal and Spurs weren't competitive while they were building a new stadium. Is there a danger you can't deliver that and a world-class team? Omar says we want to avoid it. He says we don't want to inhibit our ability to invest in a team for us to continue being competitive while we're building a new stadium. He says there's various ways around that, getting our finances in order, being profitable, etc. Obviously, again, as it was kind of indicated by Matt Slater being being a PLC and all of that, they can't talk about it. So when he says there's various ways around that, one of the other ways around that is owner investment, right? Trading of shares and things like that will circumvent those issues, that you can get cash in for these projects without it being a drain on the finances. So that's one of the things as well. Arsenal and Spurs didn't have a debt mountain, need to restructure debt. These are all options we'll be looking at. So let's look at that as well, because what they're talking about here is the debt that's existing on the club. Is there a way to roll it in to all of this? And that is potentially possible too. And why I say, once again, we have to think with the ownership, because he says these options we're looking at. So a way to deal with the Glazer debt at the same time as all of this, at the same time as potential owner investment, all of it together. Because look, if you can somehow remove or reduce the Glazer debt on this, or get rid of it as a part of the whole process as well, then that frees up a cash flow to pay for potential loans for the stadiums too. When they asked about starting this year, Colette Roche says it's all predicated on planning permission. Now, it's interesting that they're not so much talking about funding when asking if starting this year is too ambitious. And so once again, it's another indication that they kind of know where the money's coming from. Because how could you start, right? She says yes is the short answer. It could be done quickly, so long as the local council and government supports this and moves it forward. So how can they start it? They must know that they have the money somewhere, or at least a good portion of it, or have the plans for it. Because they're not, the answer here wasn't about money. It was about permits, plannings, logistics. So another indication that they kind of know the money. And it says, again, we as a club are going to pay for the new stadium, but appreciate there's enabling work in the infrastructure, and they're working with the government on all of that. Naming rights, we haven't thought about how to word it, but it's all on the table. A unique opportunity, so we'll have an enormous amount of partnership opportunities. Brands can help us improve this fan experience within the stadium. That's one of the things I was discussing earlier, like in different sections, like different brands you can use within, obviously, to enhance things. Asking about that. Different sponsors for different sections. Correct. You can have a sponsor for the fan zone, sponsors for certain hospitality areas, things like that, right? So stuff like that, where you get sponsors who are essentially buying almost like real estate within there for their names, right? I don't know about that, Lewis. I actually have no idea. Yeah, I listened to the thing from, I think it was Andy Burnham yesterday, saying that he felt it was accurate, the study on the amount of revenues and stuff that would be created for the city. So yeah. And here, part of us doing this around the benefit for the wider region and not just Manchester United, and that's been really clear since we were in the SoFi. So you remember a few times I've said they were super, super impressed with SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, because it wasn't just the stadium, but the whole park around it and how they regenerated that area, and there's events and there's stuff, and it's really quite nice to be in. And they were really, really impressed with that it was like this whole place, not just the stadium plonked in the middle of a city. Yada yada about the old stadium. We've heard all of that. So he talked about increasing 120 to 130 million, which is about what I said, and that's probably at the minimum in the beginning, anyways, just from the stadium itself. So yeah. So then there's stuff about the commercial and the housing, other aspects. Talks about ideally bringing the women's team into the major stadium and getting the fan base so that you can get 40, 50,000 people there. Obviously, that would help make women's football very self-funding and very big. He says it's not very clear at this stage about the cost of a retractable pitch, and everything that comes with it is financial. So we don't know if it's financially sensible to do the retractable pitch yet. We're not sure. But I would say I would lean towards maybe no. I feel like it's going to be harder there than it will be in like in a genuine dome, but we'll see. They're confident in filling it. They're talking about the ticket prices and how at the stadium, then by having more seats, they can have the core seats stay the same price, but then they can obviously inflate the other tickets, and the hospitality and all of that. So hopefully they do that. Yada yada, all of that. So he says, then there's the question here once again, is it fair to assume this will impact recruitment and performance on the pitch? And he says, I wouldn't agree. We're putting ourselves in the best financial position to be able to invest in our team and make it better. We're not necessarily going to be investing significant amounts, but that is going to be out of choice because we want to manage our football costs more efficiently. Our number one goal is to get our teams winning and to get the men's team competing for all the titles consistently. We're not going to deviate from that. So, the point here is that what they want is to recruit better, not just dump more money in, because United have spent enormous amounts of money on football, but to recruit better. And also, when you recruit better, you get more sales on, you can sell players better. That's part of it, is not just the total spending on transfers, but the net spending on transfers. So you look at, you look at the transfers from last year, Xerxes and Yoro, Delict, Mazraoui, Ugarte, and now Dorgu. In most of these, they have genuine resale value. So you can spend a lot, but if you then a year from now, you want to move someone on, you'll probably get good resale value on them to buy more. And so your net spend is going to be better, where selling better is a part of not investing so much. Because in financial terms, investing would be like how much extra you put in over your costs. So if you can sell better too, by not giving out crazy contracts, by paying correct fees, then it doesn't mean you're going to spend less on transfers, but you might sell better when it doesn't work out. And that means you can spend the same amount, but it requires less cash to do it. It requires less money to do it, and your finances end up way better. I mean, if we could sell 200 million, 50 million more per year, that we can spend the same amount, and that 50 million in sales is a huge, huge difference. It makes a massive difference to the finances. So again, he was asked about recruitment wise and talking about everybody being in alignment and getting the right players in and sticking with players who fit, who are versatile, but can be more that can fit multiple systems, but it's more about the philosophy. And it asks, it talks about Champions League, and when we have Champions League, we'll have more revenues and more capacity to invest in the team. But we have financial measures to allow us to go and invest even if we're outside of Europe. So that is all important. It says, ultimately, we want to just be more efficient in our investments. So just because we'll have more revenues to invest if we're in Champions League, it doesn't mean we're going to go and overinvest. We need to be cautious to make sure we can make good decisions, and we're not making sales on the basis purely of financial reasons. So if you go back to the strategy that I laid out, again, they still want to buy younger players for the most part. They still want to avoid high fees for the most part. They still want to do low wages for the most part, all of those things. So even if they're in Champions League, they have so I spoke to somebody about this, and the way that I gathered it very strongly, that I'm quite certain is accurate, is that, they have their plans for transfers this summer, and there's players who are in those plans no matter what, like Giovanni Kenda. And I believe one other, at minimum, that they feel they have lined up, but I don't know who it is. But that was what I gathered. But besides Kenda, that there's one other that they have lined up. I don't know the name. But I think it's somebody I think it's a name we know, but not a name I know which one. So we'll see on that. But that they have a couple lined up kind of regardless, Champions League or no Champions League, that those are going to happen. Then in a few positions, they have more flexibility where, they're going to look in the bargains and they're going to look at maybe a more expensive player. So you take something like striker and you say, okay, Mateta, if we can get him for 20 million and we're outside Champions League, we'll get him, because maybe then we feel like that gives us our best bang for the buck for now, where we can still invest later, but gives us some stability, get another young prospect in, keep developing Cheeto, and say, all right, we've got options here. So in a year, we'll see where we're at, and maybe then we go big on striker. So, things like that. But at the same time, if we get into Champions League, then perhaps we go much bigger for a much better prospect, or, a younger prospect, or a better ready-made player like Osimhen or something like that. So that's where they'll have a couple of tiers of concepts. And then you look in the midfield, it was interesting, like that Anton Stack name, like you take him, that's a good option. 20 million supposed price. And then you've got young players like Hackney at 20 million. And then you've got 10s like Rig and Nippon and these guys that are probably going to be 20 million. And then you've got like more expensive ones like perhaps Ederson, who's like 50 million, and all of that. But it is interesting, looking at PSG and all the praise that they're getting now. What did they do? They sold their stars. They moved on their big names. They moved on their biggest wages. And then they still have a few veterans, like, I think Marquinhos still there, right? But they moved a lot of them on and bought a ton of young players in. And it's working. It's working. It's working for them quite well, And so obviously it's in League One, and we'll see. But I think they're better either way. I think they're better now than they were with Neymar, than they were with Messi, and all of those together. So, they're doing a good job of that. And that makes a lot of sense. While spending a lot less, they're at least as good as they were before with a higher, potential. And Marquinhos is a great player and a super professional and obviously a legend for them. So, that's fine. But it's like, that's the type of thing. Like, it makes sense when you do it right. And it's interesting that PSG finally are kind of doing it right under Campos, doing that kinds of things. And I think that will be kind of semi-mirror of a strategy that will be approaching things too, where we don't have to overspend like absolute crazy, but go and get the right players. But that doesn't mean you don't get some big ones. I mean, they transferred in Kvaratskhelia now, right? And so like you're willing to go for it on top of that too. But it is but you did build the core with a lot of young players and things like that. They've got a lot of great players, from Doué to Vitinha to, to João Neves, to all of that kind of stuff. And we really liked Doué, mind you. But yeah, we were behind the queue when it kind of came up last summer. And in terms of the cost, it was quite high. So yeah. So, they're doing a smart thing, but the biggest thing is I think Campos and Enrique are in extreme alignment. And there's different ways to do it. But when your coach and your sporting director are in alignment and they're actually controlling things, and it's not Al Khalifi or someone random or Joe Glazer, buying stars for no reason, then you do better. It's just logical. You're going to do better with football people in alignment, making football decisions smartly, even if it's less big names, even if it's more young talents and things like that. You're going to be better in alignment. So I think that they've kind of got that right, but ironically, we're doing the same thing now. and my criticism of how their club has been run was it was in a lot of ways run pretty similar to United. Constant focus on the big names, the big names, the big names, the big names, with people getting involved who shouldn't be involved. Really similar to what United did, and now they're kind of fixing it, and so are we. So I do expect we'll do better. And again, as time goes on, you go back to last summer. Agree or disagree? I mean, I'll do a poll here, and I was about to do the thing that what like Twitch people do, say one in the chat if you agree. But when you really look at it, you tell me, because I think it's the case. I think that last summer, when you actually look at it, I'm not saying it was perfect, but the last summer was the best window in 10 years. If you really think about it in terms of the value of the players we bought, the caliber of the players we bought, the lack of complete flops, the wages that they're on, when you make all the factors in, we haven't had a better window. We haven't had a better window. Maybe in longer than 10 years. Jose's first summer, I don't think so. Zlatan lasted, a year, got injured. Pogba turned into a disaster, left for free after all that money we spent. Matic lasted a couple years. They were old players. They didn't set us up for the future. There was a lot of age in there. They were good players, mind you. They were really good players. Don't get me wrong. Players I really liked, from Jose. But it was a short-term improvement, but not a long-term one, and we paid for that. I mean, we've been that was a big part of not just that, obviously, not just that window, but that window was a big part of the reason the squad has always been kind of in decline, and all of that, One of Ollie's wasn't too bad. Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Dan James, if that's what you mean. It wasn't bad. I mean, we made a profit on James. Maguire's still here, but look at the fees we paid. We didn't, Maguire, we just paid way too much money for those, unfortunately. And again, it's not saying that it's perfect, but the point is that if you had another window like this next year, and you got 5 more good players to compete to replace your other players who aren't performing, Højlund and Anthony who's not here, and Casemiro and Shaw and all of those, then you'd be doing great. Then you'd be doing really well. We'd be doing a lot better, let's say, than we are. But I think on balance, when you look at all the factors, it looks good. It looks better than any we've had. And again, it doesn't mean it's all the way there, but it is a staged process. I'm not saying Pogba was a flop, but it wasn't the right time to buy him. Big money, big wages, we weren't ready, and in 2 years he was unhappy. In that respect, it was bad. We're 14th. How is it our best win? It's our worst ever season. That's just results-based analysis. That doesn't mean anything. We're not bad because of the transfers we made last summer. Like, nobody's sitting here saying we're bad because of, De Ligt, or we're bad because of Ugarte, because Ugarte is a lot better than what we had last season. De Ligt is better than what we had last season. Xerxes better than Højlund. We have the players we've got have improved us, but the other players have gotten worse on the main. It's the players from the last 10 years why we're shit. Not the players we just bought. They can't fix the team, unfortunately. Yeah, Liverpool signed to no. It's not to say it was a perfect window. It's not to say that we did enough. It's not to say that we've done all of that. That's looking at it in a grand scheme of things. I'm talking about when you look at all the factors in comparison to other windows. We can't solve all the problems in one window. But I think on balance, we bought young players who will be here, who are improving week over week, year over month, every single game. We are getting better and better and better, and that is important. And the players are looking better and better and better. Those players are looking better and better, even though as a team, we're still not there and we're still not where we want to be. I definitely can say that you buy good players because there's a squad of 25, and if you buy 5 and they improve, but 20 are declining, you're on balance, you're getting worse. So it's really not doesn't look that way. Like it's math. It's basic math. 5 players can't make up for 20. Yeah, 5 players can't make up for 20. 20 players in decline, or it's more like 18. Because when you look at all the players from the past, who has actually improved this year? Ahmad and Bruno, right? And unfortunately, Ahmad is injured, so that sucks. But when you look at players from the past, who's gotten better this season? Of all 20 other squad members besides the 5 we brought in, who's improved? Bruno and Ahmad. That's it. Nobody else. I would say those are the only 2 players who have actually improved. Maguire, maybe. Maybe Maguire's gotten back to where he was 2 years ago, but that's about it. They've all declined. So you have 18 players declining and maybe 7 improving. That's not going to tip the scales. That's why in the next year, and they're not suited and balance and all that. So you have 18 in decline and 7 improving. So what do you got to do? Well, you've got to take 9 more out this summer, which they will do, and bring in 6 new ones. So now you have 13 in players improving, and you switch the scales. And that is what is going to change the course of United's results, is you got to tip the scales to have more players improving and on the upswing than players on the downswing. And unfortunately, the players on the downswing are mostly where some of our better performers. You know, you include like Lissandro in that being injured. It's not his fault, but he is injured. You know, you include Rashford not being here, who was the main goal scorer for the last 3 years. You know, that's an issue. That is a serious problem. So yeah, that is a difficult time. I mean, even Kobbie Mainoo, I don't think he's been on the improvement this year. I think he's been a little bit worse this year than he was when he first came in due to burnout and things like that. You know what I'm saying? That's because of just all the issues that have gone on at this club have made it practically impossible for some players to improve and to do better. But hopefully we will improve on that basis moving forward. But yeah, we're set to have a good window where I think if we miss Europe, I would suspect we get Kenda and like 3 or 4 other players around the 20 to 30 million mark. Then, if we make big sales, we could still add to that. With Champions League, I suspect we get Kenda, 1 other closer to the 20 million mark, and then we get, again, 3 or 4 more players, but 1 or 2 of them might be more like the 50 million mark or something like that. So, you know, they're not going to just spend on names because we have more money, but there's still going to have to be players that fit the philosophy and what we want to do. So it's going to be really interesting times. I've seen a lot of links to young center backs. So I believe we're going to get a young center back. We're going to get Kenda. I'm quite sure we get at least 1 midfielder, and it sounds like the focus will be more on a deeper midfielder, and then a striker, 2 strikers potentially. I think that will be the main thing. The right wing back, center back, 1 or 2 midfielders, and then a strike, and then 2 strikers. So those would be the main positions that we buy. The 10s thing is a little less clear, you know, at the moment, but those are the main positions that we're looking at right now. And new goalkeeper too. We are looking at goalkeepers. Yes, I mean that is truth. That is a fact as well. I always forget the goalkeeper to add into this, but we are definitely looking at goalkeepers. Any chance we're in for Howson? Yes, the problem is competition. That's one where you could say, if we were in Champions League and we had the ability to compete for him, we could probably get him. Or we would try. Without it, you're probably going to say no because he's going to go somewhere else. So, like, that's an example of one of those where Howson still fits. You're not going and buying some big name, but you probably can't get him financially without Champions League. Does that make sense? That would be a good example of like how you could have multiple ideas without changing the concept. You know, where there's more expensive players that are still young and still good. and all of that. So, all right. So I think that covers a lot of what I wanted to cover today. I want to do a predicted lineup, not a voted for one. We'll just kind of chat through it because it's today. Obviously, United playing Sociedad. This is a big game. I mean, this kind of is. Every game's going to be like this in the Europa now. I mean, we have this one, and then we'll still have 3 more rounds to get to win. But yeah, we don't have a ton of options with some little injuries. We kind of know a few players that are going to start, but yeah, it's tricky. So it's a big game. I mean, this is a really big game for us, isn't it? This is like determines the season. So what we know based on how we've been playing recently is that Xerxes starting and Bruno is starting. We kind of know that how the back line is going to be for the most part. It's going to be Dorgo, it's going to be Dallo, it's going to be Mazraoui, it's going to be Delict. Yoro has a little bit of a knock again, so it's going to be, and Maguire's not back yet, so it's going to be either Heaven or Lindelof. I think it'll be Lindelof, like Arsenal. I think we're going to see pretty close to the Arsenal lineup. I think we'll see Lindelof in here. Quite honestly, I think we'll see it like this again, and I think Heaven will come on as a sub. There's a good chance Ugarte gets in here next to Bruno for this game. Yeah, I think Heaven will get in as a sub. And then in the front two, I don't know, but I'm suspecting it'll still be just Garnacho and Højlund. What do you guys think? I suspect that's what it'll be, is Garnacho and Højlund still. Maz on the left. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Delict. When it's Delict will be on the right. And Maz on the left. Yeah, I mean, I suspect it's still going to be Højlund and Garnacho. Push Bruno up and play Casemiro. I like that, Connor. I mean, like, that's what I would do. Yeah, I do like that. I'd go Casemiro and Ugarte in the midfield because then you have a lot of defensive coverage. You can cover up some of Casemiro's weaknesses and exploit his strengths in the Europa competition. I mean, that would be good. No, Eriksen and Tenzi. No, I don't think Eriksen will play from Sunday to Thursday like that. That's just my opinion. I don't think he will. This would be sharp. Lindelof is going to be at center like he was last time. I'm thinking. This would be pretty sharp. This would probably be the best you could do. I truly don't care at all who you put up front, but in this case, Højlund or Garnacho or whatever, they're just going to be the outlet ball. I think it's about as good as we can do with given the team available. I don't mind this quadrant of 4 for the Europa League. Now, Højlund didn't start on Sunday. His confidence would be not great at the moment. Yeah, if Ugarte is in the team, is he ready to start? I think if we didn't have Europa, he probably would have been playing against Arsenal. So maybe. It's not like he lacks match fitness. It's just whether his injuries is okay. Yeah, it's a game I would have loved to have Fred in, honestly. Collier's back, but I think he'll be one you want to use off the bench for energy late on to hold a lead as well, especially if you can get it. Honestly, we need like 1 goal, man. And that's why I'm just like, just get Bruno forward with Xerxes. I feel like we'll get a goal like this. I feel like we'll get a goal this way. I just do. I feel like we can get a goal like this. But I'm gonna say I'm going to say Garnacho. I mean, Garnacho had a good game, so he should surely be playing. He did play well against Arsenal. I mean, however you move it around, if it was that front three in function, Garnacho will be the out ball and Xerxes will be dropping in. It's just how they play. This is probably the best team we could put out today. Like, every game is a game you love to have Fred in? No, not necessarily. Like, if you're playing against little teams where you're gonna, where you know, you're, I like Fred, to be fair. I mean, when you look at this team right now, yeah, I probably would play Fred over half the players in in our squad right now. But yeah, in general, he was really good in Europe. He was good for us in Europe, and they shouldn't have. Ten Hag shouldn't have dropped him for that second leg. He's an idiot. Shouldn't have dropped him for that Europa League. After the performance against Barcelona, I still cannot believe to this day that Fred was not in the team for the next Europa League round. After that performance against Barcelona, I cannot believe that. The stupidity, the absolute imbecility to not have Fred in your team when you saw what he did against Barcelona and you were in the Europa competition. He thrived in those games. He was so good in European competitions. It was like his best performances. That and the big top 6 league games. It was just unbelievably stupid. I could not believe it. Blows my mind. That was just crazy to me. I think we would have won if we had that, because we completely lacked the edge in that second leg and the energy. Yeah, he really didn't like him, but his midfield was, you know, what always cracks me up and why I can't let it go is I remember I always praise Fred, and always so many people would always tell me we can't control games because of Fred. And then look at last season, how it was after he left, how much control we had. Our worst ever season in terms of control. The midfield was worse than ever. Our control was worse than ever. We conceded more shots than ever, had bigger gaps than ever. Fred wasn't why we didn't have control. Fred was oftentimes covering up the massive gaps in the team. And then he lost him, and the midfield fell apart 10 times worse. Yeah, Fred was our best midfield for control in a long time. It was. Yep. Crazy. Things aren't always the way as they seem, you know. Anyway, yeah, I think this is close-ish to what we'll get. If Ugarte can't start, then it'll be Casemiro, Bruno, and then it'll just be Højlund, I would guess. Otherwise it'll be that. So it's like Ugarte or Højlund, I'm guessing. That's what I think the team will be, is Ugarte or Højlund. Yeah. All right. That's what I've got. That's what I've got for today. We also had a great attack with Xerxes, Rashford, and Amani. So, you know what's really funny, right? We look at Garnacho. Amorim's finally finding the solution of putting him on the right. It's the same thing. It's the same dumb decisions. I'm not blaming Amorim for this, because now Rashford isn't here, but Rashford was better on the left. Garnacho was better on the right. He's more creative. He's less selfish. He doesn't just constantly shoot the ball. He creates for others. He's so much more dynamic on the right. And it still is so infuriating that we insisted on continuously swapping them so that they were each in their worst position. Just, it's so dumb. Like, a blind person could see that we were better with with Garnacho on the right and Rashford on the left. And we just kept not doing it. Just not doing it on purpose. So, crazy. All right. Thanks, Money Mouse. See you later, buddy. I'm going to end it here. I will be live for the watch along later today. I might do a short little video before the game when the lineup comes out, just to hang out for a few minutes, but otherwise watch along. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me today. Kind of excited about all the news and things that have come out. Hopefully we find more to discuss during the break. coming up, as there's an international break over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we have some interesting things to talk about on all of that. But I'm kind of excited for it. I am. But yeah, I'm really hoping our season doesn't end tonight. I really, really am hoping our season doesn't end tonight. I'm not prepared to give up. I still want to have the hope of something to play for the rest of the year. I know we all do. I'm not ready. So hopefully they pulled this off. Okay. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you for the game later.